Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Math with Dr. War. In today's lesson, I'm going to be looking at word problems involving linear equations. I find that we always do the procedures of solving like a two-step, variables on both sides, or a linear equations with parentheses. And when students see solve for x, they can solve for x. But once it's put into a word problem, sometimes they get a little bit stuck. So today's video is how do you read, understand, and solve a word problem involving linear equation. As the TASC test, it's all word problems. And they're going to try to embed the linear equation within a word problem for you to solve. So let's begin. So the first example I have here, it says consider the steps that a student wrote as he solved the equation. And the equation given is 6x plus 9 equals to 33. We have step 1, which is 6x equals to 24. And then the solution, which is x equals to 4. So clearly some steps have been skipped, which is okay. Now the question that's being asked is which statement explains why the solution following step 1 is a valid step. Now notice the word following is underlined. When you're on the TASC test and you see any words that are underlined, bolded, or in italics, it means pay attention to me. So who are we paying attention to? They want to know why the solution, so I'm going to underline that, why the solution, which is x equals 4, is a valid step following step 1. So following step 1, which is 6x equals to 24, the student wrote x equals to 4. How did the student go from step 1 to the solution? So if we have 6x equals to 24, and we want to isolate the x, the 6 and the x are connected by multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division, so we would have to divide both sides by 6, so x equals to 4. So in order for the student to go from step 1 to the solution, they had to divide both sides by 6. So let's look at the answer choices that are given to us. A says if you add 9 to both sides of the equation, the sides remain equal. Now we're only focused from step 1 to the solution, and A is not our answer because we didn't add 9 anywhere. We divided by 6. Let's look at B. If you divide both sides of an equation by 6, the sides remain equal. Yes, that is our answer. Our answer is B. Now, my students always find these problems a little bit difficult, but you have to read carefully. They wanted to know which statement explains why the solution following step 1. So here's step 1, and then the solution that followed was x equals to 4. And how did the student go from step 1 to the solution? We divided by 6, and that was our answer choice. These problems are not that difficult. We just need to read carefully. Do not divorce your reading skills from your math skills. Let's look at a second example. The equation 0.25x plus 50 equals to 240. So they gave us an equation. Can be used to find the total height of a ramp in meters given the distance x in meters from the beginning of the ramp. And our question, what is the value of x? So they want us to find x. So I'm going to start with my equation. Okay, I'm going to put it here. I have 0.25x plus 50 equals to 240. And I am solving for x. So I'm going to put a box around my x. Remember that box clues me in to get rid of the 50. So I'm going to subtract 50 from both sides. As I did this in my class, I explained to my students that this question can be on the non-calculator because it's not that difficult. I'm going to bring down the 0.25x equals, when I subtract 50 from 240, I get 190. Solving for x, the x and the 0.25 are connected by multiplication. The opposite would be division, and I will divide both sides by 0.25. That cancels. I have my x isolated, and now I'm going to do my division. So I'm going to go over here. My divisor is 0.25. My dividend is 190. I'm going to make it a decimal, so I'm going to think of money, $190. Remember, when you're dividing decimals, your divisor must be a whole number. So I need to move my decimal point 2 places to the right to make it 25, which means that in the dividend, I have to move my decimal point also 2 places to the right, and it becomes 19,000. And here's my decimal point, and I can bring it up here. And now I'm going to begin to divide. Now your test is multiple choice. Let the answers help you. Now 25 goes into 190. I see here this has a 2, 2, 7, and a 1. This is not brain surgery. I think it's 7. So if you take 25 and times it by 7, that's 35. 14 plus 3, that's 175. So 175. Here's my 7. When I subtract, I'm going to have to borrow. I get 15. Okay, bring down the 0. 25 goes into 150, or you can ask yourself, how many quarters are in $1.50? That would be 6. 6 times 25 is 150. Now I don't have to keep going. Once I get that 7 and the 6 and I look at my answer choices, this is the only answer that is reasonable. Remember, your test is timed and no one is looking at your scrap paper. Once you've finished your test, the examiner is going to take your scrap paper and shred it. So you have to use a lot of strategies to help you get your answer quickly, and also leave time for those problems that will be a little bit more difficult and you would have to put in some extra time. So once I got the 7, I could have stopped right there. I didn't need to go 25 into 150 because that was the only 7 that was there. So my answer is the 760. So this could be a non-calculator question. Now, if it was on the calculator section of the test, always remember this. Oh, let me change my color. This right here is what you're putting into the calculator. So I would go 240, take away 50. That gives me the 190. Then divide it by 0.25. And notice I got my 760. So as you go through working out your problem, you're just using the calculator for your arithmetic. And remember, you can't put the equation in the calculator. Okay, let's look at another problem. Now here I included a gridded response. The equation below can be used to predict A, the number of antibodies that should be present in a patient's blood, D, days after taking a particular medicine. Now let's go back to that. It says the equation below can be used to predict A, and notice A has a comma, and then following, they're telling us what A is. And it's the number of antibodies. So the letter A, which is your variable, is representing the antibodies. And the D is representing the days after you've taken a particular medication. And this is our equation right here. Now notice in our equation we have two variables. Usually when we're solving our equation, we only have one variable that we need to solve. So whenever you're given an equation and it has two variables, that's your clue that you're going to have to replace one of these variables by a numerical value, and by reading, you're going to decipher which variable will be replaced. So let's continue. Using the given equation, after how many days? So they're asking after how many days? So it seems like we're solving for the days. Will it be predicted that the patient will have 640 antibodies in their blood? So we're solving for D. So we're not going to replace the D. We're going to replace A with the 640 because the 640 is your antibodies. So I'm going to write my equation. A equals 60D plus 100. And again, this question can be on a non-calculator. These are very nice numbers. The A I'm going to replace by 640 because A represents antibodies, and they said you have 640 antibodies. 60D plus 100. Remember, I'm solving for D. So I'm going to put that box, which clues me in that I have to subtract 100 from both sides. This is eliminated. I have 60D. And this is a lovely subtraction. Very simple. 0, 4, and 5. And solving for D, I'm going to divide both sides by 60. The zeros here cancel, so it's basically 54 divided by 6, and that is an easy division. 54 divided by 6 is 9. Now we have a gridded response, so we have to input our answer. Now some of you like to start here. Remember I said you always write your answer at the top, so I'm going to write 9 here, and then your next step is just to bubble your 9. And you're finished. You can put your 9 anywhere. Okay, so let me take this out. You can even put your 9 at the beginning and then bubble the 9. Or you can put your 9 in the middle, wherever you choose. As long as you write it in at the top and then you bubble in the column, you are fine. And that's your answer. You can put your answer anywhere you want to. Again, just write it at the top and just bubble in, and it's up to you. It says the equation y equals 1.5x plus 3.5 can be used. So this is our equation. Notice our equation has two variables, which means one of these variables will have to be replaced. Can be used to find y, the total cost of riding in a taxi in Tulsa. So y represents our total cost. Given x, and they're going to tell us what x is after the comma, the number of miles that were traveled in the taxi. So y is the cost. I'm going to write my equation. Y equals 1.5x plus 3.5. I know y is the cost and the x is the miles or the distance. And the question is asking us, well, how far did Damien, very interesting, I have a student in my class whose name is Damien. How far did Damien travel in a taxi in Tulsa if he was charged $33.50? So remember what I said. You have two variables. One of them will have to be replaced. Who does the $33.50 represent? The cost. So I'm going to have to replace y. If you can't figure out who you're going to replace, look to see what the question is asking you to find. They want to know how far did Damien travel? How far, which means the distance. And the distance is in miles, which is your x. So we're solving for x. So if you put the box around it, you know you're not changing x. So the y is $33.50. equals 1.5x plus 3.5. So we're solving for x, and as I told my students in class, this also can be on the non-calculator because these numbers are very nice, even though they're decimals. And this was why I decided to do those videos on basic skills, because I was afraid that students may go on the test and get something so simple and can't do addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division of decimals, and that would be so terrible. So solving for x, I'm going to subtract 3.5 from both sides, and because they're decimals, remember we have to line them up under each other by the decimal point. That's canceled. Again, this is a lovely subtraction. 0, 0, decimal point 0.03. When you take $3.50 from $33.50, it's just $30. Equals to 1.5x. Solving for x, we would have to divide both sides by 1.5. That cancels. So we have x. Again, we can't divide as is because our divisor is a decimal. So to make it a whole number, I'm going to have to move my decimal point one place to the right. And in the dividend, I'm also moving it one place to the right. So this becomes, it goes from being 30 to 300.0, and the 1.5 goes to 15. And if you go on the side, you have 15 and 300. 15 goes into 30 2 times. 2 times 15 is 30. When I subtract, I get 0. But you're not done. I find students stop here when they get 0. They're like, oh, it terminated, I'm done. No, we still have this 0 that we have to bring down. 15 goes into 0, 0 times. So x is actually 20. And you can check your division. When I divide, I think of money. So if I had $300 and it was being divided among 15 people and I only got $2, then someone cheated me. No, $300 divided by 15 people and all I got was $2? That's not right. So 2 is not your answer. 20 is more reasonable. And again, we have to put our answer in. So you can go right here, and I'm going to write 2 and a 0, and then all you have to do is bubble your 2 right here, and then bubble your 0. And you're finished. If you want to, you can go in the middle and put 2 and 0. As long as they're next to each other, it's fine. And then you can bubble your 2 and then bubble your 0. And there's your 20. Or you can put it right at the front, 2, 0. And bubble your 2 right here. And then bubble your 0. So whenever it comes to the gridded response, remember what I said. It's best to write your answer in the top columns, and that will guide you on how you should shade in your answer. Again, if you're using the calculators, if this was on the calculator section, remember that only this section right here, you're using the calculator for. So let's clear this. Clear, great. So we would go $33.50, subtract $3.50. Notice I got my 30, and now I'm going to divide by 1.5, and there's my answer, 20. But remember, the TASC test is 2 parts. You have to know how to compute with a calculator and also how to compute without a calculator. And that was the reason for doing the basic skills video, because as I made this assignment, I realized that some of these problems are so simple to solve, and if this came on a non-calculator, I was doing a disservice to my students. So please, if you need to do a little bit of review on your basic skills, I did a video on adding and subtracting decimals, multiplying decimals, and dividing decimals. Please check them out because the TASC test is 2 parts. I hope these examples have been helpful. Good luck on your TASC examination.